Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
You get into like a zen.
Yeah.
And that's what I really enjoy about lo-fi is it's almost like if you had what's the best, like a mental massage. That's the best way I could put lo-fi.
Yeah,
It's like if you're, let's say you've been super stressed and you've been doing something that has taken your mind off of taking care of yourself. It's a good way to like reset it. To reset yourself, like I'm at home, I'm not at work anymore, and to remind yourself you're in that environment again, you know? Yeah. So that's the big takeaway from that. But you're good to go?
I'm good. I'm ready.
All righty. Well, welcome back to Win the Night podcast. I am your host, Josh. And for this episode, I am pleased to welcome someone who was not only from my unit in the Marine Corps, but also I found out was my second cousin. So please introduce yourself.
How's it going? My name's Arthur Cano. Just go by Cano though. Yeah. Joined the unit, not too long after you, essentially?
I like a month or two.
Yeah, about a month. And we had a good 6-year run. Found out we were cousins. Second, third?
Technically second.
Second.
If I'm not mistaken, our grandmas are siblings.
Right.
Yeah.
Our grandmas are siblings, and then
our moms are cousins, first
Right.
cousins. So therefore,
so
you're second cousins.
yeah, it was pretty surprising, especially to find out like, hey, I got more family members in the military. So.
And well, not just that, because the thing about they say you never really stop meeting family, at least in like a Hispanic family, that you never really stop meeting them. And that's been the case for my mom. Like my mom has never stopped meeting her cousins. Every time she goes out anywhere, like out of state or someone's coming to visit, it's like, oh, my cousin's coming to visit. Oh, who is it this time? It's like, oh, it's this person. And like, how do you know? I don't.
Right.
And then it's like, this whole thing of like, oh, this new cousin that I've never met before that somehow got a hold of you, that somehow knows who you are, you know, and that's been the case for her. But for me, I haven't really had that experience where like a bunch of cousins like really at least care to reach out and get to know you. I don't know if it's like a generational difference thing or what, but like for me, I hadn't really experienced that. So when I found out we were cousins, it was like more of a, like, we just ran into each other.
Yeah, no kidding. Like we were just thrown into each other from obviously the Marine Corps, just assigning us to this unit. So,
and I can't remember exactly. You'll have to remind me, because I don't really remember who found out, because I tried to think about it on my way here. Like who told who that we were cousins? I think.
That's going back. I think you brought it up, but then I do remember, and I don't know if this was before or after, but my mom, she actually was like, "Hey, is there a Lopez in your unit?" And I'm like, yeah. How do you know a Lopez? Like, where's this coming from? She's like, he might be my cousin's son. I was like, oh, okay. Well, does that mean we're related?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But it was I don't really remember like the timeline of it, but yeah, I can't remember also who brought it up to each other first. So,
and well, I don't really think in hindsight, I guess it's not that important, but the point is that you or I reached, like, hey, are we cousins? And I remember I did ask my mom, like, hey, so do you know anybody by this last name? And then obviously she's not going to know you because your last name's from your dad, but she had researched, I think, like she saw, like, you know how on Facebook it's like people you may know.
Yeah, the mutual friend thing.
And so that's where I think she found out that she saw you as people you may know, and she saw how they were connected.
Yeah, with the Dominguez side of the family.
Yeah,
that was especially it, because I mean, there was a lot of cousins and uncles and aunts that I knew about growing up, but we didn't really interact with them much. Like they kind of stayed to their own, and we did other things on our side, my dad's side maybe. Um, yeah, that was actually one thing. Like looking back at it now, it's like as family, I wish we would have had bigger events or like where we all got together a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and we're here now.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because I'm curious, given that we share one, I guess for me, it's my maternal side of the family, which is for you the case too, that we share that family side is the maternal side. You said you wish that you had more family gatherings. Did you mostly spend those family gatherings like on your dad's side? Is that what you were saying?
I would say, yeah, it definitely was more on my father's side, but even then, like we were always busy. Me and my brother and my dad, he kept us involved in sports throughout the year, whether it was baseball, hockey, or football, or he was even doing sports like volleyball or basketball during, I guess, those times in between for like the Chicago Park District. But yeah, I mean, we were busy. So I'm looking back and it's like, all right, where would that fit in? Not really sure. But, I mean, because I look at my dad and when he talks to his friends too, and like how they all grew up, they're all such a tight knit, right? And they were friends since they were, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and they have all these stories. And like when I look back and it's like, okay, I have a couple friends that, yeah, I could talk about stories from when we were first grade, second grade, but not that many compared to like my father. My mom, not so much. She kind of stayed to her own, but yeah. And then I feel like our family filling in would have been a pretty cool gathering, just to kind of see who everyone is and actually meet them and interact with them a little bit more.
So then I guess we share that in common because, well, with my mom, we just didn't really have, like that side of the family just didn't really have gatherings. And I think it had more to do with the fact that as we got old, as I got older, I noticed that, there were more problems in that side of the family. Like it was just more people, no longer talking to each other. Right. And family drama happens anywhere you go. So there's just no way to avoid that. But I think that that's something that interesting. Maybe that comes more so from that side of the family. Now with my dad, like I didn't, like when my parents split, I mostly grew up with my mom. So like I didn't really witness my dad's side of the family much. So I can't really tell you too much about what that was like, but it sounds like you had a similar experience than what I did with my mom's side of the family, which is like, we didn't really gather.
Yeah. It didn't really seem like there was big events that were, for us to all gather. And every now and then there would be, cause it would be like, all right. Like the Murillo family was maybe one or two times when we were interacting with my mom's side of the family. But then other than that, it was just very, very minimum, I would say. And yeah, I mean, we would just hang out with my dad's side at that point.
And what would you say, like, so you mostly grew up then with your dad's side of the family. What was your big takeaway from that? You said that he had to you noticed that he had his close friends from a long time. Do you think that stuck with you? Like, what did you learn from seeing that side of your dad's family?
Well, I mean, so I guess I didn't start. Let me backtrack a little bit here. So obviously my parents were together, but then they split while I was in high school, junior, maybe sophomore year going into junior year, something like that. It wasn't until then I actually maybe started noticing that my father actually was hanging out with more of his friends and how they were actually so close and growing up together. But before that, I mean, when I try to think about my parents' interactions with their friends, it's not really something that comes to mind too often. Because they were pretty, my parents, they were pretty tight knit in itself. So we didn't really interact with much of their friends. And then now, when we all get together with different friend parties and stuff like that, finding out, oh, he's got a kid that's my age, or he's got two kids that are my age, or like a year older or a year younger. And it's just like, well, that would have been cool to have an actual group to kind of grow up with. But yeah, everyone kind of does their own thing. So
right. What was it like to be a young Cano? Arthur.
Yeah.
A young Arthur.
Yeah, young Arthur. Well, I'm an Arthur. My uncle, there's an uncle on my mom's side that's an Arthur, and there's an uncle on my dad's side that's an Arthur.
Ah.
But the one on my mom's side is Arturo. So I wasn't even known as Arthur. I was actually known as Eric, which is my middle name.
Ah, that makes sense.
So yeah, if you look at my page now, I think I have it as my middle, then my last, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't use my first.
Yeah.
So growing up, like, I never liked Arthur. As a kid, I was like, oh, that's too much of an old person name. Like, it's there. But yeah, growing up, kind of address that question. Growing up as a young Cano, it was just, oh, you're John Cano's son. You're a Cano. Like, okay, you're a Cano. So
you people knew you as your father's son more than the individual. Is that what it was growing up, like as a kid, or?
Yeah, definitely. My brother and I, we were both known as Cano's sons, Cano's kids. But we had our own identity too, in a sense that everyone knew that we were like respectful towards everyone. I mean, that was pretty big growing up. My dad didn't let us slack on that. Hey, good on him.
Yeah, good on that.
But it was, that's just kind of how it was.
It's funny you mentioned the that's how people knew us, was like, oh yeah, your kids are so nice and polite, because that was super important, at least to my mom. Like, you be polite,
right.
Like, and that doesn't mean like let people walk over you. That was the one thing that I'm glad that my mom did teach me, was the be polite and do your best to avoid conflict. But if somebody starts trying to walk over you, say something.
Oh yeah.
But I'm glad that the first thing that was taught was don't react with aggression. If somebody comes at you the wrong way and then they antagonize you, okay, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But initially, be polite, and that's how we were known, was like, oh, your kids are so nice, and that was our reputation.
Right. Yeah.
And if anything, it was a good start, to then figure out how to manage, like when you do get upset, right? Because like that's the stuff that as kids we don't really know how to regulate. And at least, I mean, for me, I was mostly a super nervous kid. For you growing up, do you feel you were more outgoing? Were you nervous at all?
I guess it's interesting now, because like now I am outgoing. Like, I'll go up to someone, I'll say good morning, or I'll start a conversation, right? I don't really like being in an area or being in a setting where it's just quiet, because then it's just like, okay. But when I was younger, I do remember I was more on the shy side, but not to the point where I was only like, I would isolate myself. I was shy, but after I got to know someone, like I was fully authentic, or okay, I didn't have to worry about being a little hesitant with kind of interacting with people.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was kind of like, I was a lot like that, where if I wasn't comfortable with you, like I kind of just kept quiet, and then once I got comfortable with you, okay, that's when and my personality would come out. Which is, I guess, you said that as an adult you're a little bit different than when you were a kid, because when I met you, I saw you as more like you were more confident, and obviously it didn't dawn on me like this guy's shy. At least that's not how I interpreted. So that's something that. How long did it take you to come into that?
Well, I guess so. With my parents' divorce, obviously me being the older brother out of the two of us, I felt like I had to kind of grow up a little fast, kind of mature a little bit, and just address issues, just open up. I found out that just kind of holding things in, or not speaking your mind, or not sharing your thoughts doesn't really do you any good. So also, I mean, I was how old were you when you joined the unit?
I was so when I enlisted I was still 18, but when I went out to boot camp I was 19.
Okay. So I mean, what was I? I was 23 when I enlisted, and then by the time I got to the unit, I mean, I was already exposed to different life events. I've worked full time. I was working part time. I worked in different settings. I talked to different people. So I mean, I would say definitely in that like junior year of high school is when things just started changing from being like, all right, hold back shy to just like, hey, I'm going to speak my mind. I'll be respectful towards you. You be respectful towards me, and we'll just conversate, talk. And I didn't feel like that was anything I wanted to hold back. So,
no, I mean, I could definitely see the difference, at least in confidence versus, like, let's say somebody who just checked into the unit and was like fresh out of high school, which was pretty much me, because I took a year off of high school where I was like, I wanted to make up my mind whether or not I wanted to do it. So I was like, well, I don't want to be active. Like, I knew that, right? And then I found out that the Marine Corps has reserves. And then I was like, okay, maybe that will work. And so, but I was still pretty much fresh out of high school, like I haven't really faced something super challenging in life up until then.
Yeah.
And most of the guys that check into the unit, it's the same thing. Like, they're 18, 19-year-olds, and they haven't really gone through anything difficult, and that was their first difficult thing that they went through in life. And so the maturity aspect, the confidence isn't fully there, because you're like, I always tell people who like never have been in the Marine Corps or haven't been around people who are Marines or in the military even, like, one thing that, like, it's cool that you're a Marine if nobody around you is a Marine. But once you're around other Marines, like, who cares? Like, at that point, it's like, oh, you're at the bottom of the barrel.
Yep. You know your place, and hey, own it for now.
Exactly. And so it's hard for people coming in when they first check in to have that confidence to them or have that ability to, like, speak their mind that early, unless they've had the life experience. But also, in the life experience, not necessarily the age, because what I've noticed is there's been guys who are older that don't have the maturity, that still have the maturity of like a 18, 19-year-old. And the life experience is important. So you mentioned that you were an older brother. Mm-hmm. So you said you had to, look after, how many siblings? It was 2, right? 2 total?
Yeah, just me and my brother.
Just you and your brother, right? Yeah. What were the challenges you had to go through that made you feel like you kind of had to grow up?
Well, I mean, so me and my brother were only 11 months apart, right? So was the Irish twins that everyone knows about. But growing up, like going through high school, I mean, I was always the one that was obviously in that first position to do something, right? And whether it was right or wrong, I didn't know. I just kind of did things. But I don't know, kind of taking that lead role, I feel just as being a bigger brother, older brother, definitely helped propel that. Some of the challenges, though, for sure were, I mean, my parents' divorce was initially a little rough. It was a little rough on me. It really pushed me outside my comfort zone to kind of just do something about it. And yeah, I mean, I had to balance, my own identity, and then kind of balance being a messenger between parents when they're going through divorce. So I imagine that's probably a common, path that kids may fall into during those kind of times. Yeah, I mean, it was probably part of that.
It seems like a common theme, what I've noticed. I've talked to Cedicero, and I'm sure you've seen that, where he was the older brother too. And for me, when my parents split, I was the younger sibling. So I've only heard of what the experience is like from other people that have gone through that situation as the older sibling. So now hearing it from you, it seems like that theme is pretty common, where the older sibling takes on the role of parent, basically. Do you feel like that was the case for you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely presented itself, different times. But like I said, with me and my brother being 11 months apart, we were both old enough to kind of step into that role as well individually.
Right.
But, I would obviously find myself doing things a little bit differently, and then I would kind of see how my brother was doing it. And I remember that during that time too, it was a little rough between my brother and I, because I didn't think he was doing things right. I did them one way and it worked. My parents approved of it, and I thought my brother should do that too. So that definitely put some tension between.
And what age ranges was that from, where you guys were having those difficult times?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was in high school so much. maybe like, 17, 18 when you're in a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And then it kept going probably until maybe sophomore year of college or something like that. Yeah, because at that time, yeah, my brother and I, we really didn't talk. I remember people would ask, "Oh, yeah, how's your brother doing?" I'm like, "I don't know," and we literally live the room next to each other, but we didn't really see each other. We didn't really interact with each other.
Yeah.
Different groups of friends. He also, so I went to Mount Carmel High School for all 4 years. He went there the first 2, and then he transferred out to the local high school. So that also kind of obviously put a different kind of divide between us. Not negative or bad, but it was obviously that was a present, divide.
That's funny. I didn't know that situation between you and your brother, because I've only known from more recent times where I'm assuming things got a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the similarities that I have, that's funny that you say that, not in like a comical way, but in like an ironic way, where my brother and I kind of had that issue where when we were once we became teenagers, there was like a split between us that happened, like a rift of like, I don't like how you do things.
Yeah.
And then I don't like how you do things. And so it's like, all right, well then we can't work together.
Yeah.
And, but it sounds like, at least from what I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys kind of have, or at least made amends at some point.
Yeah, we definitely have. We're on, like, I think I call him every other day now. We're FaceTime. Mm-hmm. He works as a firefighter for the federal side. So I mean, if he's on work, he's waiting for a call, right? Waiting to show up for some emergency. So I'll take up some of his time. Sometimes I think, hey, I'm taking up all your time. He's like, yo, I'm waiting for a call. So it definitely helps get the day by.
Yeah. What do you think you learned from that that time in your life with him, and like that rough period with him?
Well, that was definitely an eye opener, as far as just because I did it one way doesn't mean that he had to, right? Mm-hmm. Because obviously I was trying to help groom him to be successful, which that's what I thought I was doing, right? Because I was getting praise. I thought I was being good. I graduated high school, graduated college. I was on the right path. So I wanted to kind of help him through that. But in doing that, I was kind of probably putting more tension between us by forcing or nudging him to do something maybe he didn't want. And at that time, I definitely didn't look at it like that. So, but looking back at it now, I mean that, it helped me understand that, hey, we're all going to have different perspectives and different approaches to a certain objective. You gotta, you want to be present in it. You want to be aware of it, but you don't want to try to be the driver of that all the time.
Well, from now seeing it from your perspective, right? Because that was one of the things that, my brother and I also had like issues where he felt I should do it a certain way. And I get it, because from your perspective too, like although you guys are so close in age, my brother and I are only, a year and 9 months apart. So we're not full even 2 years apart.
Right.
So when you're that close in age, like you guys are, you and your brother, like you almost feel like, well, at least from my perspective, the younger sibling, I don't feel like you know that much more than me. That's how I looked at it, where he goes, I know a ton more than you. And it's like, I don't think you're making the right decision, because this is what I would do. And it's like, well, I can't make my own decisions then if you are constantly telling me I need to do this and not this and not that. It's like, when am I going to be able to live my life?
Right. Yeah.
So this is from my perspective, right? Like, of let me live my life type thing. And from his perspective as the older brother, which you were in those shoes, it's like, I'm just trying to make sure you don't crash.
Right.
And seeing it from both perspectives also is eye-opening for me. Have you guys ever had a conversation about, that part of your life, or was it just like a common understanding at some point?
Yeah. I mean, we never really talked about that time really, but I mean, it's definitely more on the side of common understanding. Yeah, no, actually that's a interesting point that we've actually, and I think about it, at least I don't really recall it. But if we did, it wasn't too I guess too significant to where I can recall it at this point.
Yeah. Well, from what it sounds like, and like I said, I only saw the better side of it, where it sounded like to me, at least, when we went to Yuma that one time, where, I mean, you were talking about him like you guys were on good terms by that point. So it sounds like to me that it's not, for you guys, it wasn't important enough to, like, you needed to have that conversation where you're on good terms. So it's like you let it go and that's that, right?
Yeah, and you know what? And actually, so we both, well, he enlisted or depped in, whatever you call it, right? When you take your oath and then you got to wait to go to boot camp. He did that probably like a year before me, right? So I went the college route. I got my bachelor's degree. And then at that point, I was still like, oh, you know what? I was actually thinking about joining the Air Force. I was waiting on a recruiter. And then I happened to see a Marine recruiter, which happened to be my old classmate from high school.
Oh,
and he's like, hey, why don't you join the Marine Corps? I was like, well, I don't know. And then my brother and I, like, we were joking, like, he was like, he's going Marines, I'm going Air Force, the whole chair force thing, right? Obviously, he was like, yeah, you're gonna be a chair force, you ain't gonna be good. I'm like, all right, I'll join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But he joined first, right? And then he actually left for boot camp about a month prior to me. And after, when he left, I think that was definitely the switch that went off in my mind, because I was like, you know what? He's done a lot of great things, and this is the next thing that he's about to do and complete. So I definitely gave him some recognition for that. And, I definitely wanted to just compel, like, hey, you're not me, I'm not you. I want you to do your things and be great in your life, and I'm going to support that because we are brothers. And especially now, this is when we were both leaving for boot camp, or the thought of it. We're going to boot camp. We could be sent off to war, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thought that everybody, that's the thought that went in my mind too, is like, well, we just had a big conflict in the Middle East that's not technically over. That's how I saw it. Yeah. So I get that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was definitely one of the things I was like, you know what? I realized I was just, I wasn't a great brother in a sense, letting him kind of grow and figure things out. And I was kind of push my own agenda on him. So that was where I was like, you know what? Hey, you do you. I'm going to support you. And we're in this for life, So.
I like that. Yeah, I'm super glad that worked out, because it's rough when if you don't have that situation where you've had a chance to, like, make amends, because, like, the people who know you the best are your siblings. Like, those are the people who can not only know you the best, but also have the ability to hurt you the most if they wanted to. And so it's really rough when it's the other way. So I'm glad, because you only have him as a other sibling. Like, for me, I have. It's not like it's, I have these other siblings. No, like, I have other siblings that I can have connections with.
Right.
Where this is your one sibling to have a connection with, and so it's kind of one of those things where. No, yeah, I'm glad that it worked out for you. So moving forward to that decision where he went to boot camp, how soon after did you decide, like, I think I'm going to do this?
Oh, I mean, before he left for boot camp, I already took my oath and I was joining the Marines.
Oh, gotcha.
But my departure date just wasn't as early as his. So because he was going crash fire rescue, active duty, I was going communications reservist.
Right.
So my time just wasn't up yet. And but yeah, no, it was already established that I was going.
Yeah.
And I know at that point too, when I did take my oath, and I depped in, I can tell that that stole a little bit of shine from him, because he's like, oh, now you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, that was also another reason why I wanted to just recognize him when he left, because I was like, hey, like, you did it first. I'm never gonna take that away from you.
Yeah.
Hey, I look up to you to doing that, even though you are my younger brother, right? So yeah, that was part of it as well.
And what made you choose between? Because he went active duty, correct? And you went reserves. What made you go reserves versus active?
So I went reserves because I wanted to finish up a doctorate for physical therapy.
Right.
So that was my whole goal. They told me, hey, you'll be gone for less than a year. You'll come back. You'll be able to complete your program. And I was like, all right, dope. That way I can. They also told me too, when you're in the reserves, at least you have a foot in the door to go active.
Right.
Which when we got to our unit, they're like, yeah, that doesn't happen.
Nope.
It doesn't
That's a
happen
lie.
like that. So,
Yep.
yeah. So I mean, that was also something that was kind of on my mind when I joined as a reservist. But my main goal was to finish my my doctorates for physical therapy.
What was your experience like compared to what you thought boot camp was going to be like?
Let's see. So remember, I was 23 when I went through, and my experience, I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, it sucked getting yelled at or getting IT'd or whatever that, they call it now. But for me, as long as you, and this is what I always understood, as long as you do what you're told and nothing more, nothing less, you won't be messed with and you'll be able to kind of get through, right?
Yep.
Now, obviously, there's outliers where, hey, the DI is going to pick on someone because they like to.
Yep.
They find someone in their in their squad or platoon.
You're funny looking enough.
Yeah, we're gonna come after you. Right? So, my experience, I think I got called out less than 5 times, and I was guide the first 3 weeks because I was old.
Ooh, okay.
Right, I had a degree.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pressure of being guide initially, and then they were like, do this, do that. And I'm like, yo, okay. And I still remember one of the days being guide when you had to bang on the hatch, right?
Yeah.
My hand, I couldn't feel it at all. Like they literally made, it was swollen. It was numb. It was just like, all right, I don't even know if I could, other than hearing it, I can't feel that I'm hitting it.
Right.
I'm like, come on, this is going to be great. But after that, after I demoted myself and actually survived. Yeah.
How did that go? What happened?
Oh, I was told I was going to get I was going to suffer consequences for that, but I don't know. There was other bodies that they wanted to focus on. So,
okay.
Got away with it, but then I was GP, and for me it was, hey, just do what I'm told, chow to chow. You'll get through, and
a common theme for those who don't know, chow to chow, or what you mentioned earlier, GP general population. I was GP. Yep. Favorite part. And chow to chow was something that people said when, you to survive boot camp or anything difficult really,
right.
Is to really shrink your experiences to like, oh, I'm 3 months away. If you look at it that way, right? Like that was one thing that would make it hard for you to get through something like that. And so they say like go chow to chow, which is basically chow is food. So like your mealtime to mealtime, and Sunday to Sunday. That's what it was for us, is chow to chow, Sunday to Sunday. Because that's when we got an opportunity to like write letters or whatever, or go to church, or if you were religious and all that.
Right.
So that was also another thing that kind of helped me, was the Sundays. For you, did you have those breaks? Did you go to any of the religious events? Is that something that helped?
Yeah, so actually, so I only knew about the chow to chow or the Sunday to Sunday outlook because my brother, he at least got, I think, 1 or 2 letters to me before I left for boot camp, right? So I was already kind of aware about that kind of perspective. Don't look too far, or else you're gonna struggle, right?
Yeah.
Because it's 3 months is 3 months. But the religious services were actually like halfway through is when I got to see my brother in boot camp.
Oh,
so
that's
that was
dope.
actually kind of a nice little reunion, because actually, I think I was squad leader or something, or I was guide, whatever. I was in the front of the formation whenever they would march us around, right? Drill us around. He was also a squad leader, and I remember we were crossing each other on the highway, and obviously I couldn't look or anything like that. I couldn't turn my head. But I saw like out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, yo, that looks like my brother. But him going through boot camp, he actually lost quite a bit of weight. So I was like, yo, that looks like him, but I'm not sure. He's also really dark. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But then about like halfway through my boot camp, that's when actually, I think for 4 weeks, I got to sit with him at church.
That is cool, and that's not only cool to see your sibling, but also motivating. You know, did you see him like during Marine Week just before he left?
Yeah.
How was that?
He already had, because at some point you're able to like blouse your boots and do certain different activities to show that you've made those progressions. Mm-hmm. So seeing him kind of make it through that, I was like, yo, that's awesome. And you're like, you only got a couple more weeks left, or whatever your time is, you're close. Like,
yeah.
All right, cool. I got this. I'm just around the corner. And yeah, he would be sharing like, you know, what expectations for like these next couple of weeks and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely like a good motivator to kind of just keep going. But yeah,
one of the things that I remember from that sticks with me, that like I was like, man, that is the fucking coolest thing ever. When we're first phase recruits and you see third phase recruits march by you, and I don't know if your platoon like studied them, but my platoon, like my drill instructors would make us like sit, kneel, bend, and watch the third phase platoon march by. And then it would be like, that's what you need to look like. And so we'd be like, oh shit, like we would be like, oh fuck, like, cause at third phase, they're pretty much Marines, like by that point. And so to hear how loud they were, to hear like how like uniformed they looked, like how complete they looked as a platoon, when we were like stepping on each other's feet and we couldn't march right. Like one thing me and Chidas talked about was like where it was so hard to march for some people, where like you couldn't, you're like doing the Frankenstein, you know, like trying
right and left.
And it's like people would like not know how to, it's like, it's just walking.
Right.
And it's just more uniform. And it was a hard concept at the time. And to watch the other platoons do it third phase, I'm like, bro, like they look locked in. I want to look like that.
They got it.
And then we get there. And for me, that was like the coolest transformation, because I remember I used to look at like the newly graduated Marine, or the newly, I guess at that point, newly Eagle Globe and Anchor handed Marines that came back from the Crucible, which is like a training, the last training exercise before becoming a Marine, where you go up to, what's that mountain called?
Reaper.
Oh yeah, the Reaper.
Yeah.
And earn your Eagle Globe and Anchor. When they come back, I had just gotten to this. We had just gotten to Camp Pendleton. And I remember going to the chow hall and seeing them, like after they were like all dirty for their Warriors breakfast, after the Warriors breakfast. And I like, to me, they were like gods at that point, because I was like, bro, we're garbage. And the whole time we've been told we're garbage. And then they became not garbage. So they are like gods.
They transformed into it.
Exactly. And to see them with the haircut too, because we were all bald up until then. Yeah. I was like, oh man, yeah, like they made it. And so it was really cool. But then once you do it, and it's like, you basically own the depot. When you're a third phase recruit, like anywhere, you own it. Like everybody gets away, everybody steps away from you. There was like a thing, I don't know if your platoon said it, like a gangway third phase or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we got to be lucky and say gangway honor platoon. So, so all the other, the other drill instructors would call us trophy wives every time we'd say that. Yeah, fucking trophy wives. We'd be like gangway. They'd be like gangway third phase, and then we'd be like gangway honor platoon. They'd be like, yeah, trophy wives, dude. And so it was unique. There's nothing like that. I don't think I've ever experienced a feeling of accomplishment like that since boot camp. For you, have you experienced anything where it came close to that or better than that?
Let's see. I mean, maybe something similar, not better, was I guess with me, because with grad school it's 3 years, right? So your first year, and you're working your ass off to just even stay in the program. Your second year, okay, you kind of know some stuff, you kind of made it. Right. Your third year, yeah, you own the campus, right? Mm-hmm. So in that sense, that's the only thing that kind of compared to it, but I wouldn't say it was more or it was better than the transformation that you go through in boot camp from that first phase, or even from BMAT or MAT platoon, right? Mm-hmm. To first phase, second phase, and then third phase, and then you're actually watching the new guys come in, the new Marines to be.
Yeah. So when you went to get your doctorates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it as difficult as you thought it was going to be, or was it more?
Whew, that's a loaded question. And I say that's a loaded question because I think it was more difficult than it could have been. Okay. I was a reservist, so I was having to balance out drill. And even though we're reservists, right? So you don't really think that takes up a lot of time throughout your life, right? Throughout the week or the month, whatever it is, because we go in 2 or 3 days out of the weekend and then 2 weeks in the summer. I would say it was definitely more challenging because with the demands of the program for my doctorates, and then balancing out having to be at drill, it was challenging. And then, I wanted to have a social life.
Right.
So had to try to fit that in there. And then I also had a girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife.
Congrats.
Yeah,
Newlyweds.
Yep. Thank you. Hey, I got props to her for sticking it out with me. I'm rough. So,
she's good for you. She definitely cares deeply about like the things that you're doing.
No doubt. And she's my biggest cheerleader. And honestly, everyone says this, but it is very true in a sense. Like I don't know how or where I would be without her support, without her being there through these times, because it was rough balancing out the program and being in the reserves until I figured out what an RADT was. Right?
Yeah.
Until I figured that out, it was just challenging. It was stressful in a sense. Like every single day I knew I had a test or a quiz or a practical to think about. And then if I wasn't studying, then I was feeling like the pressure from not studying. But then I'm like, I want to relax. And then when you're relaxing, you're like, you're not studying. And then when you're at drill, you're like, damn, I'm at drill. I'm again not studying. I'm going to fall behind. Right? Because throughout my first 2 years, I was on academic probation and I had straight B's. So it was just like,
what does that exactly mean? Academic probation?
Well, if I slipped below a B, then I was out of the program. Wow. And then I had to wait for the next class to start all over again.
Wow.
Or there's some other intangibles too, but that was pretty much the gist of it. So it was just a lot on my shoulders during that time. And that definitely put like a bad taste with the Marine Corps, I would say, because it wasn't until I graduated that I actually started to truly see and maybe enjoy a little bit what the Marine Corps with the reserves had to offer.
And it's do you think that the Marine Corps helped you at all for let's say like the discipline to be able to push through that difficult situation where like you had to balance a bunch of things at once? Do you think that helped at all, like the preparation you went through and all the the harshness that was boot camp? Did that help you at all?
Yeah, I guess in a sense it did. Because you can go through life complaining, right?
Yeah.
And in grad school, you're going to succeed as long as you put the work in, right? And only you control that. Same thing if you want to be successful to an extent in the Marine Corps, right? Because you have leaders and they may or may not influence something.
Yeah.
But going through those challenges of the Marines and the boot camp, and then even outside of that, once you're drilling, just to keep pushing to know that, hey, there's going to be an end result. It may not be the greatest, but it will end. And then there's going to be the next task.
Yep.
Right. So you got to keep going. You can't just get stuck in one spot. That's where you find yourself in trouble.
Yeah. And like the whole thing we talked about earlier too, like the being able to break it down, the challenges to bite-sized pieces. Do you feel like you were able to implement that, or do you feel like, you had to find a different way to kind of get over those challenges?
With the
program? With the program.
Yeah, definitely had to, because you get a lot of projects. Like in the week, you can have maybe 10 or 15 projects. And you have deadlines every day of that week, right? For something, whether it's reading 2 or 3 chapters that are maybe 40 pages each, or it's, hey, you got to study for a practical on the anatomy. Taking it one thing at a time will definitely make you more successful in just, hey, getting to the next step, because you can't do, and it's been proven by a lot of different research out there, you can't multitask. As soon as you start trying to multitask, then you put your mind on too many different things where now you're really not moving.
Yeah.
Right? What are you getting complete? All right, 50% there, 50% there, 50% there. All right, now I got like 10 tasks.
Right.
And I only got so many hours out of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know? All right, I got to start complete. And then that's how you actually get forward.
Right.
And the same thing applied in the grad program too.
So now, fast forwarding after that, specifically, if you could describe what it is that you do and what that entails in the job that you do currently that your doctorate's got you.
Yeah, so as a physical therapist, I'm part of that rehabilitation process for surgeries, injuries. It could be something as simple as rolling your ankle or spraining your calf, you're tearing your Achilles, messing up your shoulder, neck pain, back pain. I treat about 15 patients a day. Just give them, I really educate them a lot on what their body deficits are at this point. Try to educate and propose a plan that may be getting them better, or at least to the certain level that they were at before they came to see a PT. But at least get them to a spot where they can function like before. Or for me, I like to always push my patients more. So I like to get you above that level. It's definitely involved with that one-on-one education. That's one of the biggest things. Teaching people how to lift, how to understand, mechanics of the lifts, or time under tension, overloading, nutrition sometimes. But I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't try to dive into that too much. I just tell them my own experience with it, and that does help. We do a lot. Like, we have to interact with a person in front of you. Sure, there are therapists that just focus on their laptop and they're just like this, and you can be talking to me, but I'm just here.
Right.
What good is that? How do you think that patient is really going to feel about the interaction with their PT? It's going to be trash, right? So we're physical therapists, but in a sense, we treat everything. It could be the body. We can help lift people's spirits by just showing them, hey, you were here one day or day one, and then now you're here, which could be a huge change. It could be a little change, but you know what? It's a change to the right direction.
Well, they say that the physical is part of the mental. If you don't physically feel good, mentally, you're probably not going to feel great either. Did it surprise you? Because I've noticed, and this is the one thing that we kind of, it's cool that we also are now working in the same field not the same field. I'm doing the repairs for your field. Yeah. I'm the technician on the equipment that you guys work on. So one of the things that I've noticed, and this is me just kind of eavesdropping, I hear the difference in when somebody walks in and they're hurting and the mood they're in compared to when they leave. Or maybe sometimes they have bad sessions and they're just in a bad mood the whole time. How has it changed the way that has it changed your patience with people in general? Because I imagine you probably need quite a bit of patience to handle people in different moods, because you're probably not getting people happy when they first get to you.
Oh, that would be amazing, but no, it's not always like that.
So how do you manage people who come in, being upset? And
well, I think you really got to try to just explain to them, why their body may be feeling this way and why they may be interpreting it a certain way, right? So keeping things objective in a sense, like, hey, we're just trying to explain like some of the mechanisms and like how our body interprets pain, right? Because there's an analogy that I use commonly, and I think probably a lot of PTs or people that are trained in pain science, where your mental health is definitely going to be correlated with your physical health, right? Because if you mentally just block out or say you can't do something, you won't, right? But you can obviously keep pushing physically, but if you don't understand it mentally, then you're just going through the motion too. So that's not good either.
Yeah.
Right. The challenge with the patients that are usually in a bad mood or struggling to just find a sense of calmness and, be okay is just the fact that no one has actually taken the time to explain to them what they may be going through.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that we always know what they're going through. Everyone is different, right? Yeah. That's one thing about this field too. Like right now I may have like 5 patients that have a knee injury, same knee injury, but different way it happened. Some may be progressing faster than others, slower. Maybe one had a re-injury, and it does challenge you to make sure that you take a step back and just kind of look at it and be like, hey, just present them the facts, why their body may be presenting it. And then they actually do find a sense of just like, hey, you know what? I didn't think about it that way.
Right.
Thank you for actually sitting down with me and explaining what I'm possibly feeling.
Yeah.
So it's challenging, but it's also rewarding on that other end.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine based off of like just what I've seen, is the people that come in, it's you're not just fixing, you're not just addressing body parts, you're addressing human beings, and those people come in, maybe that's like the 10th thing that's happened to them, and sometimes it can be difficult, and that's in any whether you work retail or food or whatever. Sure. You don't know what people are going through, and when they show up, and so one of the things that I've had to learn is to be more patient. Mm-hmm. For you, how do you feel like that's something that you've learned there, or has this something that you've already had, or what have you learned from being a physical therapist?
Yeah, the patient's key or aspect is vital in being a good physical therapist in general, or a good human being. Honestly, I feel like if they're a good physical therapist, they're likely a good human being. Because we like to say we leave everything at work, but things always do cross over.
Yeah.
Right? Your traits are always going to blend wherever you're at, and that's just how you go about life. You're going to grow and you're going to develop differently. But it's something that you want to make sure that you understand that patience is just not going to be simple. And you gotta take a step back and be like, all right, how are they presenting? How do I help address that? And then, maybe they don't get it on the first point, because not everyone's the same type of learner. You got visual learners, you got auditory, and you got the ones that have to do it. Right. So, everyone learns differently, and you just have to understand that, hey, just because it didn't work the first time, all right, you got to try it a different way, but you got to make sure you're reflecting on your own self to actually implement and utilize some patience.
Yeah. And, you take care of people. Now, how do you take care of you?
Well, let's see. So I started working in 2020, and I will say that was a little rough because I wasn't actually taking care of myself. I like to utilize working out as a reliever in a sense, right? My wife is there, so she takes a lot off, off my shoulders as well. So not to say that that's not an aspect as well. But for my own, my own independence, working out or being active in a sense is just how I take care of myself. So from 2020, when I started my role, until things started actually opening up because, hey, lockdowns. I would say I was kind of maybe going through the motions. I look back now and I'm like, how did I get people better? Right? Because I would tell them and educate them on everything and how to make sure they're getting the right treatment and the proper care. But for myself, it was just like, hey, I'm just waking up. I'm going to work. And sometimes it hit a little harder, and, but I was able to just kind of push through it.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it wasn't until I started really setting time aside to make it a commitment.
Yeah.
To take care of my own self. Because if I don't, which I wasn't, and I was starting to hurt myself, I was like, all right, this ain't gonna last long.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, like, one of the things that I struggled with when leaving the Marine Corps was I was already in the process of gaining weight and doing the whole thing of like the freshman 15 and all that stuff that happens when you start getting out. Like you feel like your time's close. But also, like, I was, like you were saying, like, I was really stressed at work. I was also balancing the Marine Corps and at the time balancing a relationship, which you're doing all three right now, right? Like you're doing the relationship. Well, now you're married, and so it's a different level of commitment. And now, and then you've got a career, and then also the Marine Corps, right? So, the one thing that I learned was that if I didn't take care of myself, I could not take care of anything else. Mm-hmm. So, you said you got back into working out again, which is something that helped me because I dropped the weight too. Because like I was
gonna say, you do look skinnier.
I was pretty hefty towards the end, and so thank you. Yeah,
you're looking fit.
I appreciate it. I've been making it an active effort because I noticed that when I was getting heavier mentally, I was also like, suffering too. Like I was, just not in a good mental space because when you don't look good physically, you don't feel good mentally too. And
that is true.
And that's what I learned the hard way. So now that you're on that end of it, where you're working out again and all that, how are you doing in general today?
Yeah, today I definitely, much better than what I was a year ago, because I was limited on the time I had throughout the day because I was making a 2-hour commute to and from work. So 4 hours out of my day was a commute, and then I was at work for about 11 hours. Right, so it was just like that was tiring, and I couldn't fit in that time to like truly work on myself or relax. I was thinking like when I knew I had the 2-hour commute, I was like, hey. Mm-hmm. I could utilize those 2 hours, like maybe decompress, listen to podcasts, maybe learn Spanish. I found myself not doing any of that really. Yeah. I ended up filling my time with useless information. Songs are cool. They help make your mood feel better, but I wanted to be more productive, and I just couldn't because I couldn't get really away from the fact that, hey, like, I gotta keep going.
Yeah, it can get easy to get lost in the monotony of the whole process of wake up, go to work, come back, start over.
Yeah.
For your relationship, how do you manage time for each other?
We have to, we're still working on that because we're both pretty busy with work.
Right.
But we try to set time aside and actually like establish like days that we want to try to do something. At least we did, and then we kind of fell off of it, but we're going to try to get back on that. But also we got our wedding ceremony in October, so those are kind of taking priority right now. But we try to really make sure like, hey, let's go out to eat, let's go watch a movie, let's go, what other things, bowling, golf, or whatever.
Just go on dates.
Just go on a date. Just hang out and try to just maintain that initial that feeling that we had, right? Because if you don't, it can be very easy where you get into a role. It's like, hey, get up, go to work, you come home, see each other for an hour or two, go to bed, and repeat.
Right.
And then it just gets very mundane, and then the spark is, it's obviously withering. So you just want to make sure that, it's very vital to make sure you establish like times and those dates to actually enjoy each other, right? Because especially now I'm married, right?
Yeah.
And, I love her, and I want to make sure, we continue to have, fun together. So can't let that go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Super important. Now, do you plan on having kids anytime in the future?
Yeah, that's in the future.
Yeah.
When exactly, we're not exactly sure. So, it could be maybe a year after the wedding ceremony. It could be a couple years, right? So, but yeah, we're constantly talking about it, joking about it, and seeing. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It won't be a joke soon.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, only like 2 more months, then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big stage. How have you handled? Because you're legally married, right? But how do you feel like you're handling that idea of like being married? Because for me, like, or I don't know how it is for other people. For me, it's like this distant thing of like, yeah, you do that like later, right? And so now you're there. So what do you feel like how does it feel like compared to what you thought it was going to feel like?
I guess that really depends on like everyone's own perspective on what they expect marriage to be,
Sure.
right? Or just a relationship in general, because that's what it is. It's a relationship between two people, and communication is key. Put that with a little bold underline, because you want to make sure that's the main effort there. But yeah, for me, it's not much different from when we were just dating, other than the sense like, hey, like, okay, we are married. We got to make sure we address things together.
Yep.
And, we got to keep working on that, because I'm not perfect at that.
Oh, sure. I mean,
who
is?
Yeah. I'll say Dre. My wife's better, but I need to keep working on that for sure. That's that. And if I stop working at that, then that's where it starts to go the wrong way.
Right.
But yeah, just making sure that you realize, like, hey, what you're in this for, you're in it together.
Right.
You got to communicate, and you're only one. You two are the only ones that really matter in your own relationship. So don't let the outside noise really influence it.
And so that's why we were talking a little bit about it before, where being away from the noise and social media and being a little bit more private made me realize that, like, it's very easy for you to let the outside kind of come in and influence, your relationship or your ideas or your ideals of let's say, for example, your I don't know if it would influence necessarily or change your what's the word I'm looking for? Like your vital, like the core beliefs, right? But it could potentially disrupt your peace, or privacy is important, is what I learned.
Right.
And so for you guys, I think that's something you probably had already down pat, or at least better than me, because I if I remember correctly, you're more of online. You're more of a conservative person, where, like you mentioned too, you only really post.
Yeah, I let's see. So, and this is actually funny, because when I think about it, one of my best friends, he got married, how many years ago? X amount of years before me, right?
Yep.
And we always did things together, and I was very active on social media.
Sure.
And then I was on him for not posting anything, not reaching out. I'm like, yo, like, I don't know anything about you anymore, because you're gone. You're in your marriage. I'm happy for you, but like, little interaction or something.
Yeah.
And now I sit here and it's like, well, I don't post much on social media either.
Right.
Every now and then, like, sure, I got Instagram, I got Facebook, and I got LinkedIn. Those are my three big social media platforms.
Sure.
Right. Which Instagram has kind of turned more into a educational piece for me, because hey, I'm a PT and I like always learning new techniques or seeing different techniques performed. So that's what I kind of mainly use that for. Facebook, and I've had a debate about this, deleting it every time, but it's like, all right, I'll keep it to kind of stay in touch with someone in case they do need to reach out, like family or friends that I haven't talked to in a minute.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't need to be, and here's another thing too, I don't need to have a conversation with you every single day to consider you a friend.
Sure.
Right. Or to be open to someone reaching out for anything. Right. I'll help as I can. And then LinkedIn is more of a professional thing, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, couple stories, couple posts, every now and then on Facebook, or it is Facebook, where it'll show you like, oh, back on this date you posted this, and I was like, man, I look at those, it's like, yo, like,
I'm a different person.
I needed attention then. Now it's just like, yeah, no, I ain't never gonna do that. But yeah, it definitely changed as I got older to just, hey, it's there. I'm not trying to post my life on it.
it's a good tool if
yes.
you use it for like obviously it was created for you to connect with people, to stay in touch with people, and I feel like maybe the way that it's used now is more of living a secondary life on social media, and that's definitely I think something that I might have also been being a part of, and where I felt like it was easy to step away from my actual life and not focus on the things that were important to me. And while you may be building, you're building like an artificial life on social media, it doesn't help promote a healthy lifestyle, because eventually it catches up. And it certainly did for me. Where eventually I was like, I'm not really happy like with what's going on right now. And I feel like on social media it perpetuates the whole feeling of like, oh, look at what everybody's doing. Like, what am I doing? And so stepping away from that was probably the healthiest thing that I've done recently mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I see why people do it now. Before I was, like you said, like I looked at other people that didn't post. I'm like, why are you here?
Like, yo, just delete your account.
Yeah. But no, I personally believe that that's the better route, because balance is important in anything. You could be talking about a diet, or you could be talking about, just in general, balance in anything that you do. It's the same thing with social media. If you put too much time and focus on that particular thing, well, that's what's going to grow, but nothing else, right? So that's where I found myself. Now, we are coming to the end of the hour. Now, before we do finish up, I do want to start a new segment here. I want to ask just a few questions before we end the discussion. First, what do you feel your purpose is?
Ooh, my purpose. I would say one of my purposes is definitely to just continue to help others realize their own capabilities. Right. In the profession of physical therapy, I have that ability to do so. And I truly enjoy seeing when it clicks for other people, and just seeing them being able to develop or grow or understand their own body, and then they can do whatever they want. So I think that is definitely one of my purposes, just to kind of help others facilitate that path where they can excel.
Fair enough. Where do you see yourself going next in terms of your life journey?
Well, got the marriage ceremony coming up, so I'm excited for that. You're talking professional or personal? Like
whatever you got.
Professional. Well, I mean, my wife and I, we definitely want to start a family, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to have children. So that's definitely coming in probably the next 5 years, right? So there's that. But I may or may not be making some moves as far as the Marine Corps. We'll see. Just waiting on some pieces to fall in line, and hey, if it happens, it happens. So yeah, if not, then I will continue with what I currently got going on, and hopefully probably taking on a new clinic and continue to be in that leadership role and help others, like new clinicians, develop as well.
Awesome. And lastly, if you could speak to your childhood self, what would you say and why?
Speak to my childhood self. Hey, you're not going to know everything, but there are a lot of resources out there that kind of help you get to where you need to be. I feel like that when I was younger, not knowing everything held me back a little bit. So if I had someone at least just kind of reiterate, because I'm sure someone has already mentioned that to me, like, hey, you may not need to know everything, but just keep trying and you'll figure things out.
Right.
Definitely would reiterate that to my younger self.
Fair enough. Thank you for coming on. Super appreciate it. I know we ran a little bit later than we expected, but things happen and we adapted.
Oh yeah.
And
adapt
we got
and
it.
Overcome. All right.
Adapt and overcome, and we got it done. So thanks again for coming on.
I appreciate it. It was an honor to be on here.
Thank you, sir.